start this off right.
Okay.
It looks like I peaked my audio doing that, but hopefully it'll come across well. That's the first Coke of the year for us.
Cracking open a cold one with the Sad Boys. Welcome once again to the Sad Boys Book Club. I'm Daniel.
I am Dusty.
Caliban's War, the first book we will be covering for season 2. Opening thoughts, pretty positive. I'm enjoying this book so far.
That's a shocker.
Well, shocker I think is a little hard. I mean, I think I came off somewhat harsh on our wrap-up episode, but I mean I did put it in the B tier.
Yeah, but you didn't put it in the S tier.
Yeah, there were parts of it that I was not as fond of, but I think on the whole it's pretty good. But heretofore, I want to say Caliban's War. I think on a page-to-page basis. I mean, obviously, nothing really big and exciting has happened yet. I mean, there's some pretty good moments, but I gotta say I'm really engaged. I think we can get into this more later, but one of the things I like this time around is I like the maybe more expanded POV that they gave this, and maybe I like the POV characters a little more, even including Holden, who I was not as fond of on the last book, but finding I like him more this time around.
Yeah. By my count so far, we have 4 POV characters in this one compared to
3?
2. Well, I mean,
there were 4 actually by the end of it.
Well, are you counting Julie and Fred in the prologue and epilogue?
Yes.
I mean, I wasn't, but if you want to do that, then fine. In that case, I'll say so far 5 because of May in the prologue for Caliban's War. But the actual story being told was just Holden and Miller in Leviathan Wakes, and so far, and I'm assuming it's going to stay this way, we got 4 POV characters in Caliban's War in the bulk of the main story, not the prologue and epilogue.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, believe it or not, is Holden.
Yeah, I was expecting him to come back, but I think this iteration of him is a little more interesting, a little more nuanced, and I also just I guess by virtue of his new role, I'm finding him more likable. Not that he was not the captain before, but in his new role as a member of the OPA, rather than just kind of a guy that's out there kind of freelancing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And to get a little bit ahead of myself here, he's kind of having a bit of a, I guess I don't know how to put this other than a character degression, but not in a they're writing the character poorly, but he had a really good character arc, I felt like, in Leviathan Wakes, and we're seeing here at the start of Caliban's War, which I think is it starts I think about 18 months after Leviathan Wakes, is what it said in the first Holden chapter, though time has already been moving as soon as this book has started. But we've seemed to have had a bit of I should say a regression, not a degression, a regression. There we go. Words are hard. Because something that's kind of happened in this first section here is Naomi has made more than one comment suggesting that he's acting more and more like Miller, and that's not something she's fond of. And yeah, so we're having a bit of a regression for Holden so far at the start of this, which I think is the most interesting thing that they could have done with him so far.
Yeah, I mean, he's a lot less annoying, so I gotta say, while An Aversion to Murder is a very good and proper behavior in real life, in an actiony sci-fi, it can come off as really weird, particularly when he himself has done a lot of killing as part of his life. So it just that kind of grated on me. Not that I'm I don't know, I think it's a little, the fact that he is less I guess sanctimonious about that, while as you point out, is a clear regression in a very real sense. It makes for a more smooth read. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes him a little more gray.
Yeah. Well, that's not really what I meant, but yeah, that is also true.
But yeah, so far, I'm really enjoying the character writing in this. I think it was one of the stronger points in Leviathan Wakes, and I think so far it has just been just as good, if not better. Our four major perspective characters so far are Holden, and then we have three new characters introduced in this book. We have a Martian. Is she a Marine? I think
Yes.
she's a Martian Marine by the name of Bobby Draper. We have
Wasn't that the name of one of the kids in Mad Men?
Yeah, that's Don's son. His name Bobby, or yeah. So interesting.
Which it was on at this time of when this book was being written. It was on TV.
Yeah, I think it would have been in either season 6 or the first half of season 7. Yeah, so she's the person we start the book with after the prologue. The other two characters we have are a colonist in Ganymede, a biologist named Prax. And the last character is, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, forgive me, she is is she a politician or is she just a high-ranking military official on Earth?
Neither.
She's an ambassador.
She's like
right?
She's a what?
Is she an ambassador?
Yeah, that's closer to it. She works for the UN as sort of their diplomatic corps.
Yeah, and it's Avasarala.
Yeah, that's more or less how I've been mentally pronouncing it.
Yeah, and she has been probably my favorite new character so far. And yes, it is because she's responsible for probably 90% of the fucks that we've read in the book so far.
Yeah, they're kind of doing something there that's very I don't know. I think their idea was they were creating like this. She's like a female diplomat, but she's tough kind of situation that they're trying to do. Which of course isn't necessarily bad, but I think that's their kind of what they're signaling there is like this idea of like it's intended as like an empowering kind of feminist thing, I think.
Yeah, no, I like her character. Speaking just to kind of keep the character train rolling, I really like the new characters that they've introduced. I think Prax is probably relatively the weakest, but I like the story that they're kind of developing with him so far.
Well, he's kind of tough in a tough spot because he doesn't really have a lot of moments for his character to shine because he's basically like he's what I can't think of his name. The character in Lost who's always screaming about wolves.
Oh, Michael.
Yeah, that's basically his character in this. He's in a very desperate spot trying to find his daughter, and he's that makes it difficult for him to be very I don't know, to show a lot of different facets of himself because he's got a very overwhelming and urgent goal.
Yeah. Which, speaking of Michael from Lost, man, talk about wasting an incredible actor on such a terrible character.
Yeah, he's a great actor. Kind of a tough one of the few, I would say, kind of bad roles in Lost.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever watched Oz, but Harold Perrineau is also in. Did I say Lost or did I say Oz?
You said Oz.
Okay. Harold Perrineau is also in Oz, and he is phenomenal in it. He serves as the narrator of the show in a form. Like, he always has his bits where he's kind of narrating to the audience the kind of context of the episode and whatnot. But he's also a character in there as well. Yeah, he's phenomenal in Oz. And it just once again, it's just kind of, if I love Lost is one of my favorite shows, but if there's a criticism, I will just level without any hesitation. They wasted a phenomenal actor with a terrible character. I hate Michael. He's one of the worst characters in the show, and it sucks because Harold Perrineau is one of the better actors that was in that show, and he got completely wasted.
Yeah.
But this isn't the Lost podcast. I think we're gonna get more with Prax coming into the next part next week. I think we're at the cusp of what could be some really good story beats for him. Now that he has to kind of jump ahead again, met up with the crew and is doing a little raid of sorts, and we'll get to that when it comes. But man, that the ending bit for Holden so far was just. I loved it. That last Holden chapter was so good, and I was like, "Yeah, here we go. I'm getting Miller and Holden on Eros vibes all over again, and I love it."
Yeah.
This book really kind of hit the ground running. But yeah, to kind of like really quickly wrap up the characters. We already kind of talked about Holden a little bit. I just want to kind of really quickly talk about the Rocinante crew. Specifically Naomi and Amos. Before we kind of dive deeper into the book itself, let's just kind of wrap up the character talk here. I can't really say much about Alex because he hasn't really been in the book yet. He's only had a couple of lines.
He's basically been in one spot when he was like, "Yep, we're about to land, y'all." Something. It was literally something like that, so they could once again talk about how Mars, at least part of Mars, was settled by Texans and Indians, and I think some people from China.
Yeah,
it was something like that, but. It's, again, kind of disappointing because I think he has, like, I don't know, maybe it's just because we're only getting him in spurts, but I remember in the first book kind of coming away feeling like I wanted to hear more from him because he was usually a pretty good and interesting voice with a very interesting background, I think. So I would have liked to have him more in this book. Maybe he'll be in later, but it kind of feels like he is the odd man out of the Rocinante crew.
Yeah. I don't really have anything really kind of new to say about Naomi. If you listen to any of our Leviathan Wakes episodes and heard us talking about Naomi, you'd know that she was my second favorite character right behind Miller. I thought she was a phenomenal character in the book. Great writing for her. Really enjoyed her scenes, yada yada. So I don't really have too much more to add because she's just basically the same character. There's nothing really new going on with her. So I don't really have much to add there with her, but I do really enjoy more of Naomi. More of Naomi is a good thing. She's still written just as well as she was in Leviathan Wakes. I don't really have anything to add. She's still a great character.
Yeah.
Amos, I feel, has gotten the biggest kind of bump up in character writing so far. And we've only had I think about 4 chapters with Holden as the perspective character, so only about 4 chapters to get a bit of time with Amos. And I do feel like he's had one of the biggest jumps. I feel like I remember him in Leviathan Wakes just kind of being there. Someone that I was like, I like him, he's cool, but he also just kind of feels ancillary to Miller, Holden, and Naomi in terms of the Rocinante crew. So
he was kind of similar. He was broadly similar to how he's written in this book, but he didn't really have much agency. He was like, it was a little bit more of like, yes, boss, let's do it, boss, kind of situation. Whereas here, you kind of see a little bit more, at least until the end, when he talked to Miller that one time. You could kind of get a little bit more perspective on him and his mannerism.
Yeah.
But I think this one does a lot better job of fleshing him out, and you can kind of, the things that were sort of maybe passive, you could glean very passively, they kind of are making more explicit in this version. Sometimes they're like literally saying things like, like he is like, oh, I've been in 11 gunfights in my life, unless you count the one time I got into a gunfight with a guy and then he got back up and then started shooting again as 12. So, things like that kind of give like a sense of him having a previous life before he signed on with originally with the water hauling crew and then with the Rocinante, but like that gives him like a grittiness, whereas before he was like almost like like I was saying with the Yes Boss, like a 1930s movie goon type vibe. He's now having a little bit more of a voice, I guess, is one of the best ways to put it.
Yeah. And we get some really interesting and potentially great character building moments from him. That are kind of us kind of peeling back the layer of who is Amos and what kind of person is he, and what about his past has led him to be the person that he is. So we're getting some cool little things that will hopefully build his character up and make him into a very exciting and fun character to read as the story goes on. I know I have a friend who's read all the books and watched the show entirely, and his favorite character is Amos. He said by far it's Amos, 100%. He's my favorite character, and it's not even close. So I'm starting to see, I think, why he feels that way about him. I think we're starting to see a little bit of why Amos can be a fan favorite character for a lot of people. So I'm excited about that because I thought he was a fun, cool, kind of just, bodyguard type character in the first book that had a little bit of nuance that we didn't really get to see, but it's nice to see him building more and more as a character in this one, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other characters you really want to talk about before kind of getting into it?
I mean, I'm sure there are some we'll mention as we go along, but I think those are the main ones we need to hit.
All right. So yeah, I guess let's just kind of jump into the plot a little bit. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, it takes place about 18 months after the end of Leviathan Wakes, and the world is kind of in a bit of a, or not the world, the solar system is in a bit of a precarious position. There are still a lot of tensions growing between Mars and Earth. The Ganymede colony, the Ganymede station, which is outside of Jupiter, I think on one of Jupiter's moons, is a bit of a staging ground for a standoff between Mars and Earth. They're kind of just staring at each other in a bit of a stalemate where it's like kind of waiting. It's a Cold War is basically what it is. Meanwhile, the OPA and the Belt, all of the Belter colonies are a kind of wild card third party that's just kind of there and not really causing trouble, but just they exist and they're like, hey, we're here, and you know what? We're ready to fuck shit up if we need to. So, yeah, wild card bitches, all that fun stuff. That's kind of the state of the universe. Venus is not great. People are staring at it from all three sides of the aisle here, staring at Venus and watching all the shit going down that is from the remains of Eros Station after it crashed into Venus at the end of Leviathan Wakes. And the proto-molecule is doing things. We don't know what it's doing, but it's doing something on Venus, and that's potentially terrifying. We don't know. But
that's one of the most realistic parts of this book, is like this idea of something terrible happening and then everybody just kind of being like, well, that's really bad. I guess we better keep an eye on it, but not really doing anything.
Yeah, there's some great bits where Avasarala is talking to somebody about asking for reports on what's going on Venus, and it's basically just like, this is what's happening on Venus. Okay, what does that mean? Don't really know, but it's happening. Okay, cool. I guess keep an eye on it and let me know what's going on. So it's just a fun little mystery.
This is probably, if I'm going to make a little bit of a prediction here, something that in the long term, one long-term aspect of this series, I would think, is going to be eventually Earth and Mars, and probably the OPA, finally putting aside their differences and banding together to handle whatever that situation is. But I feel like that's what I'm mentally, it's like in many movies and books and stuff, like you're basically mentally pleading with the character to take or not take some action, and I'm just like, guys, all of this silly stuff can wait. Can we just focus on the potentially like species altering situation that we got cooking at Venus? Can we just put things aside and just take care of this real quick? You know?
Yeah. You're just kind of waiting
So
for the Reaper invasion.
Yeah. That's the but as from a mechanical standpoint, from the fiction, it is nice because it adds a sort of sense of ambient dread and anticipation to the writing. It's Chekhov's proto-molecule.
Yeah. But that's kind of the state of the universe as it stands as we enter the book. We have almost right off the bat, in the prologue and chapter 1, we have what I'm going to refer to as this book's Canterbury incident. At least that's how I understand it so far. Because if you remember in Leviathan Wakes, the major watershed moment in that book was the Canterbury being blown up by what we end up learning to be protogen operatives working under the guise of it being a Martian ship destroying a...
They're doing a false flag, brother.
Exactly. So it was the Canterbury being destroyed, and that was Holden's ship that he was a part of before. Holden, Naomi, Amos, and Alex, and then the medic guy whose name I've forgotten, who got his head promptly blown off on the Donager. Yeah,
Poor guy.
Yeah,
got his head blown off, and they got forgotten immediately.
Yeah, it happens. So yeah, this is our equivalent, I think. I think our equivalent Canterbury incident. So we're on Ganymede. Like I said, this is a major kind of colony, a station on a moon of Saturn, or a moon of Jupiter, and the prologue is following this little girl named May, and she's taken from her daycare by her doctor and a woman who's claiming to be her mother. She knows she's not her mother, but the doctor tickles her so that she can't object to it to her teacher. Basically, she's being kidnapped and it's by someone who she knows and trusts with her doctor, and she's taken down into the tunnels into this lab. And the doctor's like, "I'll be back. It's okay. We just gotta do a few things. So yada yada." And then the woman's just like, "You want to see a monster?" And takes her, and she sees this creature. Jump scare. That's the prologue. I'm going kind of quick because I'm just kind of trying to set up the premise here, the real kind of inciting incident. So our first chapter follows Bobby Draper, the Marine from Mars, and we kind of get an establishment of kind of the political Cold War that's happening between the U.S. not the U.S. the UN and Mars, and we have this moment where we think that at first it's the UN rushing to attack the base that the Martians are on, but something that Bobby realizes as she's scoping in to watch the 7 people running towards her is it's actually 6 UN Marines running from something that's chasing them, and that something is a monster. It is the monster. I'm assuming it's the monster from the prologue that May saw, and it's just murdering everybody. It just all the bullets just go right through it, and it just reforms. It's almost kind of like a liquid. I'm thinking that this has something to do with the proto-molecule, and there's a couple reasons why, and the book is not really being subtle about trying to link the two, especially with Avasarala. And basically, it's a big fight. The monster just destroys everybody. It's about to kill Bobby, but something happens that causes it to spontaneously combust, and it knocks her away and knocks her out. And what the general military infrastructure sees is that all the comms have been jammed because there was basically for lack of a better term, an EMP that was going on, or well, not an EMP, but just a massive jammer signal that was going out, so that nobody could contact anybody to let them know what was going on. And so what the military powers that be see are just deaths going on both sides, shots being fired. So they're just like, oh, it's starting, and so they start firing on each other, and now we have the war kind of starting between. It's now going into a hot war, and we have a couple days of firing between both sides. One of the major things that happens is there are these giant mirror panels up in the either in the atmosphere or in like low orbit or something. Maybe they're satellites. I don't remember exactly if it goes into detail as to what exactly they are, but they get destroyed by one of the sites and they crash down into Ganymede, and it's not a good thing to say the least. And it causes some major damage. It ends up it's like kind of one of the things that saves Bobby. She's like just outside of the blast radius of it, but enough to where she gets hit by the shockwave of it, and it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of she survived that, and that's also where we get introduced to Prax. He's a botanist, and he is working on what type of bean is he cultivating? I can't remember.
I don't remember either. It was some sort of wasn't it some kind of like soybean or something like that?
Yeah, that's right. It was a soybean. He's a botanist, and he's trying to create some like really sustainable strain of soybean, and the mirrors are falling down to the station's surface, and they're gonna land on his greenhouse, and he's forced to evacuate. And it's kind of this whole, this work cost me my marriage, and now it's gonna just be flattened. So he just takes a sample. He saves one singular plant, and he leaves with this chick who comes to get him out of there as everything comes crashing down. It turns out he's May's father. So now his storyline at this point is basically trying to find May, because when he ends up getting to her daycare, having to travel through the open war zone, he learns that she's not there from her teacher. So that's kind of his story. I've jumped around a lot, but there's really not a lot of like major plot going on here with his first couple of chapters. The biggest thing to take away is he's a biologist. His work's been kind of ruined. His marriage was destroyed. His daughter's been taken. He's looking for his daughter. Really great character writing. Really great situational things happening in between. But that's just kind of the big through line here is he's looking for his daughter, who was the woman, not the woman, the child that we were following, who the woman took to see the monster in the prologue. And that's kind of just a good introductory for Prax, I think, unless you want to add something else to it.
No, I think that covers it.
Yeah, and that's just a good kind of start for Bobby as well. Holden and the crew at this point also, we kind of see them at this point and what they've been up to. They're basically, I don't want to say bounty hunters, because that kind of implies a little bit of neutrality, but they are 100%.
They're agents of the OPA,
yeah,
essentially.
Yeah, they're with the OPA, and they go out and do missions for Fred. They go out and solve problems, capture pirates, destroy pirates, whatever it may be. And I really love this opening bit where Holden is hailing the pirate ship that they have been chasing down, and he's basically just like, "Hey, I don't want to destroy you. It looks like your ship is basically you trying to outrun us has caused your ship to stall out. You're basically a sitting duck. I can destroy you if I want. I would rather not. How about we just, talk this out, and I'll just go take you in." And the guy's just like, "Nah, I'm good." It's a kid, and he's like, "Nah, I'm good. What are you gonna do? Kill us?" And then Holden's like, "All right, Amos, kill," or no, he's like, "Hey, Alex, kill them." And he's like, "Wait, no, don't kill us. Okay, we'll come peacefully." That was a fun little scene. I enjoyed that little bit.
Yeah, and this is the beginning of. I mean, Naomi doesn't comment on it at this point, but this is the beginning of this new Holden, who is a little bit more blasé about killing, and I think that's something that they're establishing here, and as you say that he mentions that he's done it before. He's like, "Look, or he mentions it after, I think, when he's reporting back about this incident, where he's like, yeah, usually we have to destroy them, but this time they actually surrendered," something like that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the thing, though, is they have to destroy them. They don't really get the choice otherwise. It's like, all right, well, it's either destroy them or they're going to destroy us. You don't really have a choice there, and that's not really...
Well, I mean, I don't wholly disagree, but I mean, in this case, I mean, the other ship was disabled and was not really able to do anything at that point.
Yeah. But yeah, we're kind of coming into a little bit of a more jaded Holden, which I do find interesting. But yeah, they go back. They're supposed to be taking this back to Tycho Station to be tried, and all that fun judicial bureaucratic nonsense. Somewhere down the line, Fred tells them about what's going on Ganymede, and they ostensibly get rerouted to Ganymede, and they're going to go down into the station in disguise in a different ship and kind of see what's going on. They're disguised as a ship that's a relief ship that's bringing food and supplies onto the station. And it's they actually do have supplies. It's not like it's a front or anything. It's the front is that they're the crew, but they're bringing supplies to it, and they're gonna go in there and try and see what they can do. That's kind of like how the Rocinante crew is getting onto Ganymede. It sounds like I'm going fast because I kind of am, but really things don't really start until we get to Ganymede for most of the characters. But that's kind of Holden and the crew getting to Ganymede. Like I said, really not a lot of plot to get there. It's mostly just kind of reintroducing the characters, kind of showing where they are now, and kind of reestablishing their relationships. Just general sequel setup, the kind of necessary stuff that you have to do at the beginning to reacquaint the readers to the universe and the characters that are returning in it, while also introducing new ones.
Yes.
Pretty standard.
One last little thing I want to hit on at the end of the Holden section here is when they do land, they're accosted by people who claim to be the Port Authority, essentially, but it becomes clear pretty much immediately that this is just some sort of like shakedown situation. And Holden basically once again threatens them with violence, and that basically scares them off. And not to beat a dead horse, but this is the moment where Naomi chimes in for the first time. That if you haven't been paying attention as a reader, she's cluing you in like, hey, there's something kind of different going on with Holden this time around.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important moment to mark, because the relationship between Holden and Naomi was one of the key outcomes of the first book, and I think it's worth tracking what happens with that relationship as we go along.
Yeah. And currently, at this point in time, we're following two major storylines here. We have the Ganymede storyline, which is followed with Holden and Prax, and we have the kind of political, the general war storyline, and that's being we're following Bobby and Avasarala with, and so to kind of show what Avasarala has been doing. And I really hope I'm saying that name at least somewhat close. If not, I'm going to feel like an asshole. But I don't know. I'm pretty sure she's supposed to be of Indian descent, or at least some sort of Indian ancestry. And I'm not necessarily going to claim any skill at pronouncing anything with a would it be Hindi?
It can be. There's a lot of different accent or their languages and dialects and all of that in India, but I think that is the impression that they are trying to give, is that she is, a woman from India.
Yeah, I'm once again I apologize
because they discuss like her form of dress with the sari, which, I mean, it may also be present in other South Asian countries. But I think that it is usually associated with India, from what I've read.
Yeah. So yeah, once again, I apologize if I'm not saying her name correctly. It's perks of being someone who you can't pronounce things good, that unless it's just dumb stupid America things. But basically, her story at this point is all about the war as a whole between Mars and the UN, and kind of her way of doing her own form of politicking to kind of try to push for peace. She's not some sort of warmonger. She's trying, the biggest thing that she's doing in the first chapter with her is she's trying to push a peace talk forward immediately between Mars and the UN, because she seems to understand, and I think at this point they may have gotten the video, or if they haven't, they will be soon, that came from Bobby's suit, her power armor, that kind of shows that it wasn't an actual, the military firing on each other thing, it was all caused by this monster. So she's trying to push for peace. That's kind of her storyline here. She doesn't want to let this escalate any further. She's all about de-escalation, and that's kind of her whole storyline. She's also how we get a lot of our information on what's going on with Venus and the protomolecule. And one of the biggest things that we are given with that is how the incident that happened on Ganymede with this monster, the exact same time it happened, there was a spike in activity on Venus. So in some way, this is all connected with the protomolecule on Venus. We don't know how yet. We don't know why, but it's too much of a coincidence to think that the second that this thing on Ganymede happens, activity spikes on Venus. So there is something going on with the protomolecule. They're noticing it's building structures, and I don't know, just doing general weird things. And they're doing weird things with technology and whatnot that they're trying to kind of like mimic in their test labs to try and figure out what they're doing, what the protomolecule is doing. And so this is kind of a lot of the more, like I said, there's the war storyline and the Ganymede storyline. This is more of the war storyline with that. I don't really know what to kind of talk about specifically without just being a little more broad, because that is kind of all it is there's a lot of her going behind other people's backs to do things her way, and having to kind of deal with the situations as they pop up. Meanwhile, on Bobby's...
Yeah, there's a little bit of political maneuvering. Like, she's in and out of meetings with various figures from the UN, and she's mentioning that essentially that they are pretty gung ho on wanting there to be a war, and or just the idea of just maneuvering to project strength. Whereas when she's trying to, you did mention this, but I think it's important to mention that she's that's one of her big things, that she's even, as she's walking away, she's like, oh, these military guys, they don't understand, the top brass is all men now, so they want war, or that, and I think that's so that it's to kind of like show, I think, like this sort of distinction between her and the military structure.
Yeah, I think she's a former smoker, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't pick that up.
Two things in her first chapter lead me to think that she is a former smoker, and these are things that have only happened in that chapter. The first one was that in the meeting that she was in, she kept cracking open and eating pistachios, which shows me a form of oral fixation, which is something that's very common with people who used to smoke. For a lot of people, it's one of the things that's hard for them when they quit is the kind of oral fixation that they get from smoking a cigarette. So they'll usually do a lot of things that will kind of replicate that feeling. Chew gum, eat peanuts, things like that. That's a pretty common thing with people who quit smoking. So that's kind of one thing. The other is that when she goes into her office, she explicitly makes it, or the readers are explicitly given a comment about how there has never been any smoking in this office. And I don't really know why that would be mentioned to us on top of the very clear things that she's doing with her mouth intentionally, because her cracking open a pistachio nut and popping it in her mouth 3 times or however many times it was is not really important at all. It doesn't really serve any purpose. I ate a pistachio nut in a meeting, like, woo, wow, cool, good job. But like with that kind of context added, it's kind of making me think that it's supposed to paint this idea that she used to be a smoker and she's someone who quit, and I imagine that might be some little character trait that's going to be popping up sometime down the line.
I really hope this doesn't build to some sort of silly, oh, I need a cigarette line or something like that.
It probably
I wouldn't put it. I wouldn't put it past them. Their character writing is good in the sense they form good characters. The plot is good, but there were a couple times when I was reading and I just the way that the things people would say, and maybe it wasn't as grating in the time, but it's very. I guess we would describe it as Marvel-esque now. It's just like the well, that happened kind of tone with some of the things that the way people talk. So I'm hoping that they kind of tighten that up as we go along. But it's overall pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I really don't know kind of what else to say about her storyline at this point. We've covered, other than I guess the implication of what's going to happen with Bobby's side, which we'll get to in a minute. Other than just kind of other minor bits, her son died. He was killed in it, or not killed, but well, yeah, he was killed in the skiing accident. She has a husband who loves her, and she loves him, and he's kind of like one of the bigger rocks of her life, which is nice. She has a daughter and 2 grandkids, and that's kind of a thing. It's just kind of more character context that kind of builds her more than just being this bureaucratic force on the UN. So it's just kind of nice character bits. It doesn't really do much for the plot, but it does a lot for the character. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, I wonder if her husband's specialization, because he's an academic of some kind. I wonder if that's going to come into play later.
Yeah. But to kind of, I just want to wrap up her and Bobby's story pretty quickly, because really not a lot has been going on so far, and this is kind of building towards a potential summit between the UN and Mars. So Bobby was rescued. She was interrogated, asking, "Hey, why did you guys fire on the UN, and why did you cause this war? Basically, why did you and your men instigate this war? What reason did you have to do that? Why did you cause this major problem for us?" And she was just like, "What are you talking about? There was a monster. We didn't start anything. We were dealing with a monster that had destroyed the Earth forces." And she's able to get video feed of it, because thankfully this is a plot convenience, but I will allow it because it allows the plot to move forward, and it's not the biggest of deals. They kind of it's a little clunky setup about her suit. Now it's like, oh, I have an old suit, and I like it because it's mine, and because I'm such a big bulky girl, it's hard for me to find a power suit that fits my body type. So I've had this suit for a long time. It's mine, and I really don't want to give it up because of the hoops I had to jump through to get this one as it is. So I haven't upgraded to the iPhone 15 yet. I'm still using my iPhone 11. It's fine, Apple. Don't update me out of this shit. Let me keep my iPhone 11. That's basically where she's at right now. And because she still has the iPhone 11 and it doesn't have the 4 cameras with the 18 megapixel whatevers, I don't know iPhones. I've never had one. I don't like them. Because her suit is an older model, she has a little more of like an analog, relatively speaking, recording system that didn't get fried with the jammer. So they're able to pull the video feed from her suit because it's 5.1 instead of the new 9.1 stereo Dolby that they have now in the new suits. I think she says it's like 5.1 something. I don't remember. But
I think part of it was like there was a different encryption module, and that's because that was another plot convenience moment when he's like, "Ha, your suit is not your camera didn't capture anything, so you're lying." And then she's like, "Try the other encryption module," and then it was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, then the engineer's just like, duh, I should have known that. Silly me. Let's do that right now. And of course it gives them the video. It's a very convenient thing in the plot, if we're being honest here. But I
don't have anything against her as a character, but I do question some of these decisions. Maybe they'll come back, but a lot of these seem to be kind of like digressions without any sort of that are not necessarily particularly revelatory of the character, nor do they seem to have any relevance to the larger plots.
Yeah, I don't think it's like egregiously bad either. It's just I kind of eye rolled it a little bit, like, oh, okay, here's how we get the plot to move forward. It's fine. It's not the biggest deal. It's maybe a small blemish on this book so far, but it's a small blemish. It's just kind of the plot needed this to happen, so it happened. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But yeah, so she's proven right, and they're like, oh shit, okay, this changes things. And so it kind of creates the situation to where Mars is going to go meet with Earth, with the UN on Earth. This is something that Avasarala had been kind of planning, and she got kind of rolling. And this is Mars on Bobby's end being like, yeah, this is what we're doing. We're gonna go meet with them and yada yada, and we're gonna need you there because you're the sole survivor of this situation. And the rest of her storyline up to this point is basically just her on the way to Earth, and it's just her dealing with the PTSD of being the sole survivor, watching her entire squad be eliminated by this monster, and her having to deal with it and almost dying. And it's, once again, just a lot of character writing. We get a little more information of who Bobby is as a person, and kind of how she feels about the military structure, and, you know, just kind of her place in the world right now. And we don't really have... The only kind of other characters that are interacting with her at this point are... is he an admiral? Admiral, like, Torsen or something like that? Or is he a captain?
He wasn't an admiral, was he? I thought he was like a lieutenant or something like that.
He might have been a lieutenant, and he's the guy that interrogated her, and he's kind of an ass. So there's him, and then
he's one of those exceedingly annoying people that's like, I'm an asshole, but I just have to be. There's someone, that kind of guy. He does that kind of thing, and it's like, okay, whatever, dude.
Yeah, and then we have this captain whose name I've also forgotten, and he's a religious man, and that's not really important to why he's there, but it's important to his character, I'm sure. He's not there in a religious...
Captain Martins is his name.
Martin. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was Martin or Martin something. But yeah, him being a religious pastor or cleric or something, I don't remember. It's probably important to his character.
What is it called? A chaplain is what he is.
Thank you. It's not important to the plot as it stands currently, but he's basically there as a grief counselor for her, and he's the one that kind of shows her that her PTSD is causing her to have short-term memory loss, acting irrationally, and being quick-tempered, unstable, all of the stuff. So that's kind of Bobby's story at this point. The last we see her as of this moment is they're about to be on Earth, and the last thing we know with Avasarala is they have arrived on Earth. So the next chapter, I think our next chapter is a Bobby chapter, and it's going to be her first chapter on Earth. So that's kind of where both of their stories wrap up. We wrap that up really quick, but once again, it's just kind of mostly bureaucratic stuff, kind of giving us context of the Cold War now turning into a hot war, what's going on with the protomolecule on Venus, and just kind of building these characters, these new characters that have just been introduced. They're getting built up to kind of see where their story goes, and that's kind of where we leave them at this point. And that can allow us...
I just wanted to interject here because I cracked the book open because it was going to bother me otherwise. Thorsen is a captain.
Okay. So yeah, that kind of, we're gonna leave them there for now. That's their stories at this point in time. I'm enjoying it. I'm really enjoying both the characters. I think they're nice additions to this universe, and I like kind of what's building on this more political side of the story here. I'm a sucker for good political writing. I know a lot of people. This is kind of my go-to example for what I enjoy, how I kind of enjoy a little more of a political side to a fantasy book than others. Is A Feast for Crows is not very well loved by a lot of people in the Ice and Fire community, and I think a lot of reasons why people don't like it is because of the slower pace, more political nature of it, because it mostly takes place in King's Landing and Dorne, mostly follows Cersei Lannister and Arya Martell down in Dorne, and it's mostly about the politics of the aftermath of the War of the Five Kings, and kind of how King's Landing and how the villains, for lack of a better term, because Cersei is a villain, are kind of dealing with this new power structure that has been created from the end of Storm of Swords. And it's very political. There's a lot of just kind of characters sitting and talking, and it's not a lot of action happens in it. And I know a lot of people don't much care for it because of that. I loved it. I was enthralled in it. Every time I've read that book, I've enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I'm all for that, political theater that happens. It's also why I really enjoy the Star Wars prequels, even though it's not the best writing, if we're being honest, but I don't mind the political stuff. I know you and I have both said, I think even here in this context, how we both enjoy the Phantom Menace and the political side of things with it. So
yes, I was the only child we were the only children that were like yes when they cut back to the Senate.
Yeah. So yeah, this kind of political side of the story so far, I'm really digging it because it kind of scratches that itch for me on those kind of things that I enjoy.
Well, she's a likable character. I think that buoys it quite a bit. Um, Her goals are pretty clear. I think sometimes where books go wrong with these political sequences, the council meetings, the what have yous, there are the goals are murky, or kind of in a very convoluted way. What we have here is a very distinct, very clear goal: is prevent a war.
Yeah,
Like I think that makes these a lot more legible, a lot more easy to follow, and a lot more readily interpretable. I mean, that's not to say that you can't craft a narrative where things are more murky, but I'm just saying there was sometimes when it's just, especially when it's not as well written, you're just like, what is going on here? Why am I reading this? This is boring. I think when they're doing a really good job of keeping the reader interested.
yeah,
Also, there's the fun aspect of in this universe the UN actually being able to do something to create peace. I think that's a fun, like, power fantasy almost.
yeah. Well, not for lack of trying to make war.
Well, that's true. The military command structure wants something very different, but it is nice in theory that the UN is actually trying to do something constructive for peace.
Yeah. So moving over to the Ganymede side of things, the aftermath of the escalation, I forgot the cascade as Prax calls it, has been really bad. Something that we noticed from Prax is that the ecosystem of Ganymede is breaking down really badly. The plant life is dying. The water is not really being cycled correctly. The colony is basically lost, and it's gonna be. It hasn't happened completely, but it is a done deal. We haven't seen the end of it, but there is no fixing it at this point. Maybe eventually, but as it stands now, the colony as it existed, and Ganymede was a really important colony prior to. It was a major academic foundation for the solar
Academic,
system.
agricultural, and medical major hub for all of those things.
Yeah, it was basically a scientific paradise for anyone who is educationally inclined. People would go there to have their babies because anything that could happen, any negative things could be addressed immediately. That's actually what happened with Prax and his daughter. She has a condition that needs to be monitored daily and take medication for, and that Dr. Strickland was the doctor doing that for her. So it is basically just this major socioeconomic and academic hub for the solar system, and it has had a cascade effect from this war that has ostensibly ruined it. And now we're seeing it at a point to where society has basically broken, and we are having people starving. They're scrounging for food. People have been killed in the streets. Places have been burned. There have been riots, and even the relief that has been set in place has not really been helping everybody because it's a supply and demand thing, and the demand is much higher than the supply. And what makes it even worse is, and this is something that Holden and the crew learn as they're coming in into Ganymede with their under the disguise of them being a relief ship, is that there are. I think it ended up. I think the number we were given was about 500,000 kilotons.
Something like that. I don't know. But I know where you're going with this.
500,000 very large units of weight of food leaving the system because it is a agricultural hub. A lot of there's a lot of exports on Ganymede, and this war, the fighting that broke out, the multiple days of fighting, had caused a major stalling of the export, the economy basically. So now all of these ships are trying to catch up because any more days lost is profit lost, and now you have all of these ships that are filled to the brim with food leaving the colony because they have to go settle their bill with their customers because the corporation needs to get their bottom line. So you have all of this food leaving the colony because corporations want their money, as opposed to feeding the people that are now starving on it. And it's just, it's late stage capitalism at its finest here.
It's very British Empire, actually. Also, it reminds me specifically of a couple of incidents. With regard to the East India Company.
I was about to say.
And it also reminds me of during the famine in Ireland that there were still quotas of exported agricultural products that were still being extracted from Ireland, despite the fact that they had the mass, the potato crop failures, among other things. So that, I don't know. I think that's something of a... if that wasn't a commentary on that necessarily, it was something that was inspired by that, I feel.
Yeah. And Sanctimonious Holden pokes his head out to kind of just be offended for us at this just, gross, just apathy towards a crisis by these corporations. And Miller Holden is also poking his head out, wanting to shoot everybody involved with it. But yeah, in the meantime, Prax he's still looking for his daughter. He's not taking care of himself at all. He's honestly, he almost kills himself just from exhaustion, starvation, all of the basically what's it called, when you die, almost kind of exposure at some point as well, because the systems are failing and Ganymede is basically an ice rock. And he's doing everything he can to find his daughter. He tries to get this hacker to find the security camera system to follow his daughter, and the only thing he gets is he sees the image of them taking her out of the thing because he doesn't have any chicken to give the hacker. That's all the hacker will do for him, so he has to basically just kind of give up that lead at that point. But it's still more than nothing. He knows that his daughter was taken by Strickland and some woman. And it's around here where he finally meets up with Holden and the crew. Holden and the crew, they delivered their food, and they're all upset about what's going on here and whatnot. And they end up stopping a riot from getting worse because one of the ships is about to leave that has all of this food, and it turns out that this ship is a Mal Kwiatkowski ship. If you don't remember from Leviathan Wakes, Mal Kwiatkowski is the corporation that is co-founded by Julie Mal's father, Jules Mal, and they were funding a lot of Protogen. And quick side note, there is a point with Ava Sarala's storyline where she meets with Jules Mal, and she's basically like, hey, I know you gave us information that busted a lot of dudes with Protogen after the incident that happened with Aero Station, but if you got anything if there's anything you didn't tell us in the hearings, I'm not coming at you. I'm not coming after you. I'm not trying to put you in legal trouble. I'm just trying to fix this situation. I want this to work out for everybody. I'm not going to send any legal trouble towards you. I just want anything that will help. She's like, anything you can tell me that you didn't say in the hearing, let me know. And he's just like, nah, I'm good. I told you everything I need to know. Bye. And there's an interesting little thing that happens. I forgot about this until just now. Where she asks him if he's spoken to Julie at all. And he's like, no, she's dead. And she's like, well, I mean, there's some things going on Venus, and we know that, he was like, she was on Aero Station, and Avasarala was like, no, she was Aero Station. And there's a bit of an implication there suggesting that Julie might have been contacting her parents in the time since, and I'm really curious to see how that plays out. But yeah,
right, because she detects that because he kind of gets offended at it. He's like, she died, and but she notices when he's doing that she can tell it's a little bit performative. So I think that's something that we need to watch.
Yeah. So that's Julie's father is going to be a player in this story, But yeah, there's a bunch of guards that are trying to stop this riot of people that are just hungry to try and push through and get to the ship, and they have weapons and they're gonna threaten to murder them. And Holden and Naomi, Holden wants to kill them, and Naomi's like, "No, stop being Miller. Talk your way through this." And Naomi basically, because Holden's about to kill them still, when he's basically just like, "Hey, you're gonna lose this fight if you don't just leave. This isn't this ship and this food is not worth dealing with this riot of people. They're gonna get it anyways. You're gonna die for this. It's not worth it." And the guy just tells him to fuck off basically. And Holden's about to kill them, and then Naomi comes and she's just like, "Hey Amos, blow up their ship if they leave orbit." And she's like, "Your move, guys." And then that's what causes them to leave, and the people rush the ship, and so that little food crisis is temporarily solved for those people. And that's how Prax meets up with Holden and Naomi, and he recognizes Holden, and he's just like, "Hey, you're Jim Holden. I need you to help me." And
He has a beard now. That's how you know he's edgy.
yeah, well, that's the yeah, the beard is supposed to disguise him, and it does like no good at all, because another thing that happens with Avasarala is she's shown this security footage from Ganymede, and her assistant's like, "You recognize this person?" She's looking and she's like, "Is that really like what the hell is Jim Holden doing on Ganymede?" It like not even like it doesn't work in the slightest. I love how like nobody is fooled by it. And there's a great line where Prax is just like, "You're Jim Holden," and Holden's like, "It's the beard, isn't it?" Like, it didn't work at all. So they're being monitored. They're being tailed and monitored by Avasarala and the UN, and thankfully, according to her, thankfully they haven't. They're just doing surveillance and just trying to keep tabs on them. So, they're being watched. The crew is, and they're having tabs kept on them. They're not as stealthy as they thought they were. But now Prax has met up with them. He's begging them for help, and they're going to help him find his daughter. The first way of which is by they have these like little cans of, I guess, processed preserved chicken, and they go to the hacker and they're like, "Hey, we have your chicken. Show him the use the surveillance system to follow them like he wanted you to do, and let's see where his daughter went." And the hacker is trying to extort them out of more chicken, and we have this bit of character, some insight to Amos, where he just starts beating the shit out of the dude with a can of chicken. And I'm flashing back to the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Brad Pitt just like nails what's his name, Tex, well, I don't know, and like just like beans him right in the face with no, he sicks the dog on him. He beans the woman in the face with the can of dog food. So I'm just thinking of something kind of like that. He's just beating the shit out of this kid with a can of chicken, and that was a fun little sight. But there's something there with Amos.
I want to throw out here that it's the reason he's doing this is because the kid is trying to shake them down for more than what was originally promised. And I think what really rubs Amos the wrong way, or at least what he's saying, is that he's trying to take advantage of Prax's desperation to find his daughter.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that there is something in Amos's past about like a daughter or a child that he was not able to. He lost in some facet or another that is kind of striking a chord here. That's the very on the nose kind of thing. But that if that's true, then that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, either way, even if it just rubs him the wrong way, I think it is very revelatory for his character, and I think kind of I could see people that being one of the things that people when they're building the case of who the fan favorite guy is. Those are the kind of moments that are gonna win people over that are reading or watching TV.
Yeah. So they get what they need. They follow them with the cameras all the way to the tunnel system that leads to where they ended up taking May in the prologue, and now they're going to set out and go try to find her in there. But they have to go to the ship first to prepare because they're expecting potentially a firefight. So we get more character development with all the characters and how Prax is getting more growth and learning more about his desperation as a father. They're all set to go. It's Holden, Prax, and and Amos. They're gonna go. They're all loaded for bear and ready to go kick some ass, and they're gonna go. And Naomi's gonna stay with them on the comms and be their hacker, basically, their guy in the chair, if you will. And as they're heading to the tunnel, they encounter some Martian Marines. And I loved this. This scene was fantastic. This was like classic Holden, straight up. Prax is wanting to kill them. He's like, we can take them. There's only 6. We can do it. But there's a 7th person that they've clocked as well. But Holden doesn't think he's with the Marines. And Holden goes to talk to the Marine because he's like, let's handle this with words. And I love this. This is so great. He's like, hey, we're getting through there. And the Marine's like, no, you're not. It looks like you're with the relief system. We'll escort you back. And he's just like, no. I'm James Holden with the OPA, and this guy's daughter was kidnapped along with 15 other children. We're going down there to try and find them. It looks like you guys got left behind by your unit, yeah? How about you come and help us, and we'll give you a lift off of Ganymede? How's that sound? And the Martian dude's just like, guess what, crew? We've got a new contract. Let's work with these guys. We're getting off the colony. Woo!
That was a nice moment, and it is kind of a return to the traditional form of Holden, and it makes me wonder if there's. It's kind of interesting, like this change in behavior. It makes me wonder if because in this moment he sees somebody else kind of maybe opting for the more, or wanting to opt for the more violent measure, that he kind of instinctively pulls back and is like, no, let me handle it this other way. The way he would have, in Leviathan Wakes.
Yeah. So we got a crew building here, and that's really kind of where we end with Holden and Prax as well. Prax rather. They're at the door, about to head in, and that's where we're leaving them, and that's where we're leaving everything for this. That's our first part here, kind of covered. A lot of setup, as the start of a book normally goes, but a lot of really good setup. I love it. It's the great thing about a good sequel is there's always going to be setup, because you need to reestablish the world to the returning readers, or if for some weird reason you're starting on book 2, enough information to have a new reader be able to kind of fit in more or less. And so that's always going to be a given. So there's always going to be some time taking for setup. That's just reintroducing you to the world and all that fun stuff. But it's fine. Like, it's good, and we've gotten past that setup phase. We're now into where the story is going to start really kind of kicking into gear, and we're going to finally get the plot progressing forward. And it's great. I'm really enjoying it so far.
Yeah, it's really good so far. I've enjoyed it. There's some things that I noticed that I was gonna run by you, because I don't know if you noticed them. When did this book come out originally? It was 2013, right?
That would have been my guess. Yeah.
When did Leviathan Wakes was 2011, right?
I would have guessed 2012. I can look it up here. Let me look it up.
Okay.
Leviathan Wakes was 2011 and Caliban's War was 2012.
Okay. Interesting, because I noticed there were some things in this book that I think were drawn from like news stories of the time. Like the idea, like in the Avasarala section, they mentioned something like the ongoing situation in Afghanistan, which I think was intended to be a cutesy, Afghanistan always having trouble, that kind of. I think they meant it to be funny, but that was a little weird, I thought. But I think that was kind of one of their ripped from the headlines. They also refer to the OPA at one point as being, quote, the Hezbollah of the vacuum. I think there was like some sort of situation going on with that at the time. And then another thing that I noticed that stuck out to me as being very of that moment was there was more references to marijuana this time around in the book, which I did not catch in the first book, and it made me wonder if it is a reference to the then contemporary legalization of marijuana in Colorado and Washington.
Was that back in 2012?
I think so.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure that was then.
Time flies, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
So I think it was just a lot of portions of this novel struck me as very Obama era and like those kind of things. So that's kind of what I was thinking, is that it was kind of a, I don't want to say ripped from the headlines, but very like a lot of sci-fi was in part a commentary on its time.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's art. Good art does tend to have a little bit of topical writing in the subtext.
But yeah, I mean, on the whole, enjoyed it. Looking forward to seeing what's up next.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this book. It's real good so far. It's a real shocker coming from me of all people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I figured we'd be a little rusty, because we haven't done this since last year.
Yep.
Before we go, I just want to throw a little quick update for anybody who cares. I threw in a little soundbite in the middle of our 2023 year in review when it was relevant, making a comment saying that at the time of editing that last video, which I think came out on like the 27th of December, I had finished Xenos, and I was wanting to try and finish Xenos and or Mistborn before the end of the year so that I would finish all of my 2023 books in 2023. And granted, I planned it this way, but all the same, came down to the wire. I finished Mistborn on December 31st. I did it.
Wow.
Woo!
Just under the wire.
Yeah.
Well, should we expect potentially a Dusty review of that one?
I would like to get a Sad Boys book review of Elantris, The Eye of the World, Xenos, and Mistborn out sooner rather than later. I would like to say in January, but I don't want to put myself on a deadline here and miss it. So I'm just going to say ideally before I finish another book. My wife has twisted my arm here, and I have started reading the novella collection for the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. The book's called The Assassin's Blade, and I'm really looking forward to doing a Sad Boys book review of it because I have some choice words to say about it so far. Because to give a little sneak peek of it, I've read the first 3 short stories out of the 5 that are in it, and the first 2 were garbage. That's all I'll say on that. So I'm really looking forward to doing a Sad Boys book review on that book when I finish it. I still have to read the 4th and 5th one, but I want to get those other ones from my 2023 extracurricular books done and dusted before I do that. So hopefully I will find the motivation to do that soon. It just it comes down to me sitting down and doing it more than anything else.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Happy New Year.
Keep an eye out. Oh yeah, Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah. Welcome to season 2 of the Sad Boys Book Club. Here at the end of the episode. Welcome to the season 2. Yeah. I'm really excited for this year. I know you and I have already talked about some books that we are absolutely going to do, some themed around specific months of the year. So yeah, I'm really excited for this year, and I really could not think of a better way to start this year than taking my favorite book that we covered last year and doing its sequel, because I am anything if not predictable.
Well, I think that'll wrap us up. Keep an eye out for those Sad Boys book reviews, and we will catch you next time.
Yep, take care.